Good evening and welcome to the Little Canada City Council Candidates Forum. I'm Kitty Goggins, a member of the Roseville Area League of Women Voters and resident of Roseville. I am moderator for this evening's Meet the Candidates Forum. On behalf of the Roseville Area League of Women Voters, I would like to welcome everyone, the candidates, those watching live as well as those viewing on demand, and everyone in the room. The forum will last approximately 1.5 hours. The League is a nonpartisan, volunteer political organization for both women and men organized at the local, state, and national level to encourage informed and active participation in government. This forum is part of our ongoing voter education efforts to help voters make informed decisions at the upcoming elections. This allows you an opportunity to hear candidates on issues that are important to you. There is never enough time to cover all the issues in a limited time and setting such as this. If your questions are not addressed, we encourage you to contact the candidates directly. We hope that over the course of this program, you'll learn more about the candidates and what they hope to do for Little Canada. While we never endorse a candidate, we are directly involved in shaping the important issues to keep our community strong. If you are interested in learning more about making a similar impact, I would encourage you to look at the League's information available on our website at www.lwvrosevillearea.org. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates and not of the League of Women Voters. And sponsorship of the forum is not an endorsement by the League for any candidate. All City Council candidates listed in the Minnesota Secretary of State website as registered were invited to this forum. I want to remind the candidates that this forum is being broadcast in its entirety. It will be rebroadcast in its entirety on Channel 15 and is available on demand at www.9north.org. That's 9 spelled out, and will also be available on the 9 North YouTube channel. This year, the citizens of Little Canada are electing 2 members to the City Council. 3 of our City Council candidates are able to be here with us tonight. We use questions written by the audience at today's forum, as well as questions submitted in advance to the local League's email. Questions can be written on the index card provided by League volunteers and submitted to the volunteers throughout the forum. All questions must be addressed to all candidates, and no personal or attacking questions will be allowed. All questions become the property of the League of Women Voters. Answers to the questions similarly need to focus on the questions themselves. A candidate's record may be discussed, but personal attacks will not be tolerated. Let me now introduce the 3 candidates who are here today for the 2 positions on the City Council, in alphabetical order by last name: Kwapick, Angie Malone, and Teresa Miller. In addition, Don Klusek is running for the office but was unable to be here with us tonight. The agenda for tonight will be as follows. All candidates will have 2 minutes to give an opening statement, and the speaking order was determined randomly before the forum. The timekeeper is sitting in the first row. When there are 30 seconds left for the speaking time, the timekeeper will hold up a card over here, that yellow card that has 30 seconds left on it. When there's a stop card held up, you need to conclude the red card, so hopefully it's very visible. You can, of course, finish your sentence, but I will enforce this rule to make sure we give the same amount of time to each of the candidates. I will then ask questions with 1.5 minutes or 90 seconds allowed per response. The candidate order in answering questions will rotate. Based on timing and flow, I may include a lightning round question that only allows a 30-second response. At the end of the question period, you have 2 minutes for closing statements, which will be given in the reverse order from the opening statements. We'll now begin with opening statements. You have 2 minutes for each response. We will be starting with Teresa Miller.
Hello. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, Roseville area for hosting this forum, 9 North for airing it, and the other candidates here today, members of the audience, and the viewing members at home, audience at home. I have had the privilege of serving on the Little Canada City Council for just over the last 3.5 years, and I have learned a lot about city government in that time. This is not just a 2-meeting-a-month commitment, and I have really made an effort to take a deep dive into all the issues that face not only our city, but other cities in Ramsey County, because if one of us sees a challenging issue, we all will eventually. I have a deep love for Little Canada. My great-grandparents, Sicilian immigrants, settled in Little Canada as truck farmers in about 1929. My grandparents and many other relatives have lived here in Little Canada, and I was born here. When I was 6, my parents moved away, but my heart was still in Little Canada. So when I graduated from high school, I eventually made my way back here while attending St. Kate's. I'm a writer, and I also had a career in advertising as an account executive and a copywriter. I also had a son in there somewhere, and he is the light of my life, and he is severely autistic. In a convergence of circumstances, I was laid off during the recession, and my son's behavioral problems were sort of out of control, and unfortunately, so was my marriage. So I chose to take care of him full-time as a single parent, which I have done for the past 16 years. So I'm no stranger to the disability community, nor am I a stranger to advocacy. After the 2016 elections, I felt pulled by the call for more women to enter politics, and by 2020, I ran for city council, and I was lucky enough to be elected. I have found a real niche in public service, I think, and I promise to advocate for the residents of Little Canada with the same fervor that I advocate for the disability community and my son. I so appreciate the trust that you have placed in me so far, and I am asking for your support for re-election in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa Millett. Next, we have Chris Kwapick.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name's Chris Kwapick. I have lived here in Little Canada for about the last 15 years with my family, my wife Lori, and my 2 kids, Heidi and Henry, who both attend school in the Roseville Area School District. I think unlike my other candidates, I'm not originally from Little Canada, but this is the place that my family has chosen as their home. We originally moved here because my wife worked in Minneapolis. I used to work in St. Paul, and it was very convenient. But what kept us here was getting to know the people and getting to know the community. And it has just been a wonderful place to call home for these past 15 years. A little bit about myself. I work at the University of Minnesota currently. I've worked for the past 17 years, my whole career, in either government or policy, public policy, and so that has been sort of where my niche has been in life. I, in fact, got a Master's of Public Affairs this past year in 2023 from the Humphrey School of Public Affairs. I'm a proud U of M alum and very much enjoy working there. A lot of my day-to-day is working in policy. I work with the Board of Regents and our administration on making sure that the university is making the best decisions it can for its faculty, staff, and students. One of the things about me is that I always feel like it's important that when you care about a community, you try to step up and do what you can for that community. So in 2017, I was lucky enough to be selected to serve on the Little Canada Planning Commission. I served in that capacity until 2023. I was the chair for over a year. And in fact, it was until that time that I was actually selected there was an open position this past year for a Little Canada City Council spot. I applied for it and was actually appointed. So it's been a very rewarding experience serving in this role for the past 18 months. I want to say that I have learned a lot. I hope to keep serving. I know that being appointed is a lot different than being elected. So I'm definitely here to really prove to you that I'm a good person to keep serving in this role. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris Kwapick. Next, we have Angie Malone.
Hello, Angie Malone. Thank you to the League of Women Voters 9 North for the candidates by my side so we get to know each other in this forum. Thank you, Little Canada, for the community it is. My family and I are glad to call this community home. I would really love the opportunity and privilege to give back to the community as a council member. I've been a part of the community back in my early days playing youth softball back in 1981, running out onto the field with the big boom box, Barb Peterson playing Eye of the Tiger. It was lifelong memories and lifelong friends. My husband and I built our first home here in 1994, the year we were married. We have raised 4 children here. Our love of nature has grown because of this community with Jarvis Gristmill, Eli, Spooner, the trail systems. And that is part of my inspiration for running for candidacy for the council. We now reside on the north end of the city. 2 kids are at home still, and we have our 2 dogs. My professional background is in financial planning, all things insurance, real estate management, and education. I am serving on 2 boards, nonprofits, helping families in needs, and on my lake association. I continue to volunteer arranging litter pickups in my neighborhoods. I am a runner for over 40 years now. I've completed 8 marathons. I have now turned my running into fundraising. I have a marathon in February to raise money and a marathon in London to raise money for Cancer Haymakers for Hope. I love this city, and it's a testament for my running. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie Malone. Now we'll go to our questions. The first question we have is, what are your top 3 priorities if elected? What are your top 3 priorities if elected? First for this question is Chris Kwapick.
Great. All right. Thanks, Kitty. So there's a few things that I would really like to prioritize. Number 1, public safety and public safety infrastructure, I think, is number 1 on my list. I would say that we've got some challenges where the city has done a really nice job over the past few years of doing a lot of work with their parks and trails. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of those things aren't accessible to every citizen. Obviously, our city is divided by I-35E. The only way to cross is Little Canada Road, which can be very treacherous for pedestrians and especially children. So I want to keep working with the city, with our county and local or state partners to see if there's ways that we can get more funding to resolve some of those issues. I think that there's a plan to potentially put in a pedestrian bridge over 35E, which would be very helpful to be able to access those trails and parks. Also, I feel like what makes our community great is when our community gets together. And one of the favorite things is like Canadian Days, Night to Unite. I see our community out and about. I see a lot of little Canadians very proud. And that just doesn't get to happen much towards the winter. And so I think that focusing on trying to find some sort of a community gathering space that is indoors would be very helpful. I think that would really help to keep our community connectedness together throughout the cold winter months. Obviously, it's a lot harder to get outside unless you're a hockey player. Unfortunately, I'm a basketball player. So I think that would be very helpful for the city.
Thank you, Chris Kwapick. Next, we have Angie Malone.
So my number 1 priority is to listen and represent the citizens and businesses and organizations and schools of Little Canada. From there naturally flows other important items and issues for the city. I believe we have great infrastructure for the city of Little Canada. We have great partnerships, Ramsey County Sheriff's Department, our Little Canada Fire Department, our Little Canada Rec Association, all vital aspects of our community that serve many people in great ways. As priorities go, I agree with Chris. We did grow up on the one side of the bridge going over to over 694, and I would love to see and work diligently to see a very safe pathway for pedestrians and bicyclists to connect the city as well. Also, I would like to see a city center as well. I think it does unite the community. It helps the businesses thrive. And with that said, I would like to actually see speed limits come down in the city. Rice Street becomes a semi-freeway sometimes during the day. I think lowering speed limits even on side streets and so forth is best for everybody, and plus it saves gas. So those are my priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie Malone. Next, we have Teresa Miller.
Thank you. One of my top priorities is accessory dwelling units. And the reason that is because in the last 3.5+ years that I've been on the council, it is one of the most consistently raised issues that I hear from residents. And I think that one of the advantages of it is it also addresses some of the critical needs that the metro area housing shortages is having. And then there is a trend towards multi-generational family living. And then there's also a desire for people to age in place. And so I've been hearing a lot of commentary about that from residents. So accessory dwelling units are something that I think is really important and something that I think needs to have some focus now. So that is a priority of mine in the coming year. And I also am interested in proposing increased engagement with Little Canada businesses to find ways to revitalize the Rice Street corridor. We need to increase the aesthetic appeal and functionality of the area and also support our businesses at the same time and attract new ones, increasing the accessibility to the pedestrians and cyclists, and basically just creating a vibrant community center space that attracts more visitors. And we need to implement some zoning changes to facilitate a more mixed-use development there. So I really want to do some public engagement with our business community to revitalize some of the area and redevelop some of the area on Rice Street in that corridor. And also I think, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, geez, I'm sorry. It's 90 seconds. I was going to read you. So sorry. I'm just going to rattle on.
Thank you, Teresa Miller. Okay, the next question we have. The question author states that Little Canada's property taxes are high and have been for at least the 23 years that they have been a resident and homeowner. Do you agree that Little Canada taxes are high, and if so, what ideas do you have to lower them? Do you agree that Little Canada has high taxes, and if so, what ideas do you have to lower them? This round, we begin with Teresa Miller.
Okay, I'll try to keep this one shorter. We do have, we do have taxes that are going higher, and part of that is because Ramsey County keeps raising our taxes. And the way the taxes are divided out, the county and the school districts take 38% of the taxes, and the city is taking 19% of those taxes. In order to spend any money at all in the city, we have to take revenue in. We have 50% of our budget right off the top is going to law enforcement. And so in order to keep the lights on, keep the plowing happening, keep the streets clean, all the public service, and all the activities that are going on in the city hall, we're looking at a pretty substantial amount of money right there that's coming out of our budget. And so while I understand that taxes are going higher every year with property taxes going up, I think that our taxes are well in line. And as far as the city goes, we are, I think, 4th lowest in the Ramsey County area. So we are very much trying to keep our costs as low as possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Next we have Chris.
All right, thanks, Kitty. So, yeah, as Teresa mentioned, inflation has gone up, property values have gone up, and therefore, when it comes to the corresponding tax rates, that means increased taxes to both to the county, to the city, school district, other other areas. And Teresa's right. The city is only about 19% of that entire bill that you get from Ramsey County. Do I think that taxes in Little Canada are too high? Actually, I don't. I know that they are going up, but at the same time, we are, I believe, 3rd lowest amongst Ramsey County, and definitely lower than our surrounding neighbors. So I know that the city over the years has done made a huge effort to keep property taxes as low as they can be while still giving the services that the city provides. I don't know about you all, but I've seen other cities around us, especially in the wintertime, and the snow plowing in Little Canada is better. It's just better, okay? And I think that, the services provided by the city, the responsiveness that they give to our small community when you have a problem with a sewer drain or something like that, or stormwater damage or something like that, they go out and do their absolute very best. The city has kept the staff at a pretty tight level for a number of decades. And I think that the city does a great job with what we have. And so as long as we just keep trying to make sure that we're not trying to outdo ourselves and keeping those property taxes at as level as possible, we will continue to try to do that. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Angie?
Thank you. Thank you, Kitty. As they say, death and taxes are the most certain things in life. And I do think taxes can be mitigated. And I would like to propose, if I do become a council member, for individuals and businesses and even schools and nonprofits in Little Canada, even every resident owning a home or renting property, to really engage in the beautification of our city. I have arranged litter pickups and so forth in my neighborhood. I think there's a great resource there, bringing community together to do litter pickups, maintenance of areas, maintenance of parks. The city can't get to everything, and that can be frustrating as well. So I think as a community to engage together, I will propose that we help mitigate taxes by perhaps getting rebates on property taxes and so forth. And that can trickle down to the renters, because the owners of the apartments can do rental reimbursements if they got their whole building out cleaning that park. I think there's great ways to do what we can, control what we can, and build community in the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. The next question, what ideas do you have to address crime in Little Canada and make our community safer? What ideas do you have to address crime in Little Canada and make our community safer? With this one, we begin with Chris.
Great. Yeah, just like any other community in Ramsey County, we do experience crime, and we try our best to devote as many resources that we can to preventing it. A couple things that I will say is that I think that our first responders are great. The Ramsey County Sheriff's Department, every deputy that I've come across has been a great servant to the community. They do a fantastic job when responding to incidents of crime in the city. That being said, I also think that it's important that we look at what does policing mean in our city? Does it mean that we continue with the way we have been going? Does it mean that we look at something that's more around a police community model of policing, where we maybe have more stationed officers in the community, embedded in the community? I think that is an important thing to discuss. Just like with any other service, I mean, you look at, if you take fire prevention, we have regional agreements with other departments to help each other out. Are there ways that we can maybe work with our regional police departments to also make arrangements like that? I think there are questions that need to be asked about that. I think that if we should treat it as any other sort of RFP process. We need to make sure that we're assessing, is this working for us as it has been and as it should be. As you mentioned, it's about 50% of our budget in public safety, and that is a huge part of what we need to look at.
Thank you, Chris. Next, we have Angie.
Yes, we all want to live in a safe community, that's for certain. And our partnerships with Ramsey County, Boots on the Ground, is wonderful and phenomenal, and they're responsive. And even safety with our fire department is top-notch, no doubt, compared to other cities. And I think in keeping our city safe, again, I believe it comes down to community. looking out for each other. Again, we have external controls that we can't necessarily control. Things are going to happen, but I think we can mitigate a lot of that together. We keep the front porch light on, for example. We watch for porch pirates. We help each other, remind them, maybe you shouldn't start that fire in the backyard, it's pretty darn dry. And things like that, where we are controlling what we can, while at the same time our city does provide wonderful protections with our partnerships. As I said, Ramsey County Sheriff's Department. That can always be visited every year to optimize for our citizens and our businesses. I think that's an important piece because it is a large piece of our budget. We need them accountable. But at the same time, we partner with them and create community. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Teresa?
Law enforcement is critical, obviously, and as I mentioned, law enforcement does account for a full 50% of our budget. And so I think that with a lot of, law enforcement is always going to account for at least 50% of our budget because the cost of law enforcement is very, very high because there are ongoing challenges with staffing and recruitment and retention for all policing, and I think this is a nationwide issue at this point. So that's always going to be very expensive. I do have some ideas that I would like to have looked at, and one of them is, Chris has kind of alluded to this, a community-focused policing model, and that is where we have dedicated officers in the street that are Little Canada officers. And how that plays out, I'm not sure, but I would like to see that happening. I'd also like to see some more community events and forums, some school visits and youth engagement programs, some business check-ins, some collaborative crime prevention. As Angie mentioned, it would be nice to have some more neighborhood involvement, like neighborhood watch programs, things like that. And so I have a lot of those types of ideas to mitigate crime in Little Canada. Thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. Next question. The author states that they live close to Lake Jarvis, and while many adult residents take advantage of what the lake has to offer, many feel children are not safe riding or walking around the lake due to the speed of traffic and the rather narrow shoulder. Do you have any concern about the current situation and any suggestions on what could be done to make the lake safer for all Little Canada residents? Do you have any concerns about the current situation and any suggestions on what could be done to make the lake safer for all Little Canada residents? This one, we begin with Angie.
Thank you, Kitty. Jarvis is such a gem in our city, and it is an amazing resource for those who live close by, for those who visit, and especially the children riding their bikes around and people taking the morning walk and drivers coming fast around the corner. I think that goes with I do feel we can mitigate some of those risks by lowering speed limits. And even taking it a step further, I believe it's been revisited in the past in looking at creating a one-way around Lake Jarvis. And what that looks like would create a larger pathway and a safer pathway for people walking, riding their bikes, and so forth. Obviously, there's a lot of work and due diligence with that option, with emergency vehicles, accessibility, and so forth. But I think it's an option definitely to explore, and then more people would be able to enjoy the lovely gem we have. I have ran that lake so many times I can't tell you. I can tell you how far it takes to get to my mile marker and so forth, and really to have everybody enjoy that would really be wonderful, and I'd love to serve you in that capacity on the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Chris?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So this specific question is a little new to me, but I can absolutely understand the issue. I've taken walks around the lake and understand the narrowness of the pedestrian walkway, especially on the north side there. So I mean, I think that going along with what I mentioned before about pedestrian safety, making sure that people are able to enjoy the amenities that the city has to offer is absolutely important. The uniqueness about Lake Jarvis is that it is abutted with a number of homes, including homes that have lake access and own property along there. So if you're looking at adding extra space for a sidewalk or trail or things like that, obviously that's going to need to be a conversation to have with homeowners, with the Lake Association, probably with the city of Maplewood, because they do butt up against us as well. So as I will say that I am completely open to having those sorts of conversations, but it needs to be something that's done with a lot of community input, because it will impact a lot of people's property. It'll impact the amount of traffic that they might see along there. But again, I think public safety infrastructure, number one for me, absolutely, and I'm willing to have those conversations.
Thank you, Chris. Teresa?
Yeah, this is definitely a concern because it does get very fast, especially on Edgerton, and that is, I believe that's a county road though, so we don't have a lot of say over the speed limit there. So unfortunately, that is one issue. But the sidewalks, as Chris mentioned, it's very difficult to just throw in sidewalks wherever. It's expensive, first of all, which I wouldn't have as much problem with, but there's a lot of input that would need to be had, a lot of different parties involved in that. So I would be very open to sidewalks, especially, because I think that in order to making it a more walkable space would be a wonderful thing anyhow, because it's a beautiful lake and I think everybody should have access to it and should be able to walk around it. Yeah, as far as speed limits, I'm certainly very much open to looking at where we could address speed limits from the city's perspective, but we are a little bit hamstrung when it's a county road. There's not a lot that we can do other than keep petitioning to the city. And this has been an issue that's come up a number of times on Edgerton, so we have asked a number of times to have Ramsey County look at it. So we'll keep doing it, but that's kind of, it's definitely an issue that we'll keep working on. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Next question. In the most recent legislative session, a number of bills under consideration would have dramatically reduced local residential, zoning control, to stimulate new housing. What do you believe is the best way for Little Canada to do its part to address the housing shortage? So the question is, what do you believe is the best way for Little Canada to do its part to address the housing shortage? And this question, we begin with Teresa.
Well, we are getting to a point in Little Canada where we're virtually getting built out. So at this point, we are looking at some creative thinking in terms of redevelopment and ways that we could find to create additional opportunities for properties. And I think zoning and making properties a little bit smaller, and I think we've started doing some of that, but which is not always popular, I am aware. But I think that is something we need to look at. I think accessory dwelling units will also be a way to look at housing shortage, potentially. I think we should be open to different ideas and creative ideas, potentially even tiny homes, things like that. I know that may not be a popular thing, but I think we need to look at all the potential new ideas that we can think of to create housing opportunities, and particularly affordable housing opportunities for residents, or new residents too. Thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. Chris?
Oh, sorry. So, yeah, as Teresa mentioned, she's right. Little Canada is becoming very fully developed, so we are looking towards ways to redevelop certain areas. I believe that, in the past few years, we've actually had a good number of new homes actually being built here in Little Canada, both single-family resident homes with the condos at Pioneer Commons, and also some more apartments, affordable housing units, such as up at near Twin Lake Boulevard, and there's also a proposed one along Rice Street in Demont. And I think the city has a good opportunity to work with local developers when local developers see an opportunity. If it makes sense for the city, that we can definitely partner with them to look at ways to help them finance things, including tax increment finance districts, TIF districts, to see if there are ways that make the most sense for building what would be appropriate for the city, or also seeing if it's something that doesn't work. I will say that in the years I've served on the Planning Commission, we saw a number of proposals come forward that kind of wanted to fit some square projects into some circle land. And so sometimes things just don't work. So it's important that the city keeps its local control over the issues and how over its land and how it wants to develop it according to what is laid out in both its city strategic plan and also its planning strategic plan.
Thank you, Chris. Angie?
Yes, so the question brought into something that triggered in my mind about legislature and possibly taking some control away from the local governments. And I am glad that the city still has control over their own footprints. I think that's important because we know how to best serve our constituents. With that said, there is a bigger problem to address, and that is affordable housing. We live in a very expensive cycle right now with inflation. Cost of goods and services are outpacing our wages and incomes. We're in a bit of a conundrum. In the meantime, housing is expensive to build. So with that said, I think the city can do what they can, easing zoning restrictions, helping with financing, partnering with the right developers, working with the Met Council, and so forth. Ultimately, our footprint has grown and it will continue to grow, but I think it's prudent that we do it with input from the neighborhoods, input from the people who live close by, even input from the community at large, in addition to businesses in the areas. So I think we can all solve the problem together. We just need to find the right avenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Next, what is your position on the road configuration on Country Drive and Little Canada Road, and are you willing to look at other options to address traffic concerns that do not include rerouting the road through the current Gordy's Place property? The author indicates that the Fleur Royale Homeowners Association and neighbors oppose the Gordy's Place route due to strong concerns about the increased noise and pollution and decreased property values and aesthetics of their property. The question is, what is your position on the road configuration on Country Drive and Little Canada Road, and are you willing to look at other options to address traffic concerns that do not include rerouting the road through the current Gordy's Place property? And this time we begin with Chris.
All right. Thanks. Thank you, Kitty. So this has been a project that we've been looking at for several months. And the first thing I want to say is that we have to look at what is the crux of this problem. The reason for the potential rerouting of Country Drive is because that intersection of I-35E and Little Canada Road and Country Drive is extremely unsafe. I mentioned in one of my comments earlier that I won't let my children cross that road It is terrible for pedestrians. It's terrible for drivers, honestly, because of the way that it's configured and the turns that come off of 35E. So we've been looking for, honestly, years to try to figure out a way to alleviate that problem, okay? And we've been at the city council, we were presented with, I think, something like 17 different options, this being one of them. And of those other 16 options, give or take one or two, they all had sort of a fatal flaw. And so we're looking at these different ideas of where would be the most appropriate thing without displacing businesses, without displacing residents. So as it stands right now, I am fully aware of the pushback from Fleur Royale. I met with some homeowners there last week. I took a tour with them. As of right now, I am absolutely open to other configurations, to whatever a city engineer can bring us. I want to say that we are still looking at the feasibility of this entire project, but at the same time, we do want to make sure that we're trying to address that underlying issue of making this a safer area for our entire community.
Thank you, Chris. Angie?
Yes, that is a bit of a mess up there, but at the same time, I do like what they recently have done with the different stoplights from going from the freeway, and then also the stoplight that's right after it. I do believe that has mitigated a lot of the safety issues. I have met with Floyd Royal as well, and that current solution, and I understand you have looked at many and so forth, I guess to me, if I lived there, I would really be fighting it tooth and nail as well. That road that is now proposed will carry semis and large trucks and so forth from that frontage road within feet of their building. And that also brings into Gordy's as well. Yes, we have to figure out this conundrum that we have created for some reason in our city with the freeway there and our frontage road, but I think it needs more investigation, more input, and there's always possibly another solution that somebody hasn't thought of yet. So I'm open to all discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. And Teresa?
Yes. Well, my position on the way it stands currently is that I am very much opposed to the way it is set up right now, because I have met with the people at Fleur Royale and talked to them and gone and visited, and they put out cones to show me where the 40 feet is, where that's where the road would sit from their building, and it's ridiculous. It really is way too close to the building, and I just, with clear conscience, couldn't vote in favor of that particular configuration, the way it's set up. So I am very willing to look at other options. That the one that's been presented currently is not one of them. So yeah, I would love to see some other options. I think, I personally haven't seen the 17 other options or whatever. I know that Bolton and Menk presented a bunch of other options to MnDOT and Ramsey County, and they, they were told that they weren't going to work. But we haven't really seen those. We were just presented with this map, and it didn't look that bad when you look at the map with the little circles on it. But then when you actually see it sort of laid out, it was really not a doable situation as far as I'm concerned. So, thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. Next question. What type of redevelopment do you support along the Rice Street corridor and Country Road? What type of redevelopment do you support along the Rice corridor and Country Road? This time we begin with Angie.
Rice Street is a main vein through all of St. Paul and through Little Canada. It connects us to other communities. It's a great place to have for a commuter, but it also creates some issues with creating a city that's safe and community center and so forth. With that said, I would love to create a scenario in that area. We have a lot of established businesses. We have our bowling lanes that have been there a long time, a wonderful contributor to the community. We have new buildings in the area, up and coming new buildings in the area. But I think we always need to be guided by how this affects the people that live here. And in creating a plan, taking guidance from the 2040 comprehensive plan that was, I'm sure, took long hours and a lot of due diligence, I think is a great guide. And again, I would say get a lot of input from the businesses that are there. Donut Hut's right down the road. They've been there for a long time. I'm sure they have some input. We have Taste of Scandinavia. We have Ace Fratellone. And we also have other things at the other end. We have our gas stations on both ends. We're not going to run out of gas. It's a great place to be, so let's keep it that way. Thanks.
Thank you, Angie. Next, we have Teresa.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to do some looking at the Rice Street corridor, and I think that really we need to involve the small businesses and, well, the large businesses, all the businesses in that area, and really get their input on what they want. Ideally, I would like to see that area become to have more of a city center type feel to it, because we really don't have a cohesive city center area, and it would be really nice to have something like that. We had the Urban Land Institute come in and do an assessment on several of our property areas around the city, and the area behind Culver's, which is just an empty lot. They were proposing a number of different ideas just to make it, you know, even for the short term, to have some various activities and, you know, just make it sort of a community gathering space, outdoor community gathering space. So there are a lot of things that we can do, I think, with the input of the business community and the residents of Little Canada to figure out what they would like to have there, and also with some of the ideas that have come up, I think we could really make that a very vibrant community center area. Thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Kitty. So yeah, redevelopment along Rice Street, I think is extremely important. I live right there. I can see Rice Street from my bedroom window. So this is really important to me. And one of the things we did when I was on the Planning Commission was we went through and actually took a comprehensive look at our zoning plan and what those areas should look like. And we actually did rezone a number of those parcels along Rice Street, Country Drive, also to include some of the industrial area, which I think was part of the question, to make it make more sense and to make it more ripe for redevelopment. So, but as both have mentioned, communicating and getting the right redevelopment plans with local business owners is paramount. I think there are a few spots along Rice Street that are ready, as Teresa mentioned, the area behind Culver's. I think US Bank has a big footprint for such a small building. There could be some creative situations there. The old pawn shop space is now vacant and can definitely be redeveloped. So. And one of the things I want to make sure that we're doing, again, getting back to sort of this, like, what do we want our city to look like? Talk about public safety is Rice Street on our side of the road, the other side is Roseville, I think really needs to be a lot more friendly for walkers. I can't tell you the number of times where I've taken my son, he wants to go up to taste Scandinavia pancakes or get ice cream at Culver's, and it'd be so nice to take a walk, but so many times you end up walking on the street in a small area that's either for bikes or emergency vehicles, right? It's not a lot of space. And I will admit, I've walked on there with a stroller, and it is not fun. So I think that along with those redevelopments, we will also try to make it safer for pedestrians.
Thank you, Chris. The next question is, what would you propose for expanding the trails in Little Canada and for connecting more trails? What would you propose for expanding the trails in Little Canada and for connecting more trails? First on this question, we have Angie.
we do have phenomenal resources, beautiful natural resources. And with that said, there's always room for improvement. So yes, expanding a definite connection over 694, which is safe and viable for walkers and pedestrians. The trail system over there can be connected to the Fireman's Trail on the east side of the city. I would really like to be in conversation for that. And also with my thought of making Jarvis on the northeast side of it a one-way, it's not creating a bigger width. I don't know if you've ever been to Como Lake. They created a bike path with the existing. So it's a one-way, and they didn't cut into more of properties or anything. And that would be my suggestion. Can we make that happen where we are creating a specific bike lane and a specific walking lane for pedestrians? And that can connect. We have Jarvis Gristmill that would connect across Edgerton and so forth. So there's great ways to connect the city and for all to have access. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Teresa?
I think that we have a lot of really great trails, especially on the east side of the city. I think that we are sort of lacking on the west side of the city, and I would like to see a little more trail making over on that side because I live over there, and I think it would be nice. There's quite a lot of children that live on that side of the city as well. I live just up from the North Star Estates, and that's a huge population of kids that live down there, and they're trying to navigate Country Drive and places like that where there's very little access for safe pedestrian crossing and walking. So I would definitely like to see some more of that. I also echo the idea of having a pedestrian bridge over 35E. I think that would be a wonderful way to connect both sides of the city. And ideally, we would be able to find ways to find grant monies to fund that, so we wouldn't actually have to go to taxpayer money for that. I don't know. I hope that would be available, but ideally, we would find a way to do something like that too. So I would like to see both sides of the cities connect nicely, the east and west, and then also just more trails in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Kitty. So I agree completely with both Teresa and Angie. We have great trails. I think connecting them would be wonderful. The question is, how do we get there? And I think that one of the things that we need to look at leveraging is some state bonding dollars. One of the things one of my previous jobs, I actually worked at the state legislature, and I actually have some experience in working on bonding bills, bonding projects, getting those things across the line. And I've offered, and I've reached out to our local legislators to actually advocate for some of these projects already, to make sure that these are in the pipeline down the road, so that this is something that we can try to fund without raising our property taxes too high. So I think that looking at this as not just a local issue, but also a regional issue, and appealing to the legislature and saying, look, this is something that connects not only our town, but it can connect on the southeast side, it can connect us on the northwest side to existing trails. These are projects that can make us not just something nice and local for all of us in Little Canada, but something that can give us better access to our expanding region. And so I think that is a really important thing, and I want to use as many, my know-how and as many connections as I can to advocate for us at the state level. And I've already tried to start doing that in my current position, and that's one of the things I want to continue to do if reelected.
Thank you, Chris. Next question. How do you see the city reaching out to underrepresented community members in terms of participation in city government? How do you see the city reaching out to underrepresented community members in terms of participation in city government? Yeah. First, Chris.
Thank you, Kitty. So the long and short of it is you have to go to where they are. You have to, if people aren't involved in city government and don't know what city government can do for you, you have to go to where they are. So I think, you know, embracing our local Hmong community is very important. We've had the opportunity to visit with the folks at the Hmong Senior Center here in Little Canada. We've I think, expanding those relationships to show them that the city is looking out for them, that the city wants to help them with whatever they want to do. I think that's really important. I've also had a lot of experience, or I should say some experience, the past 2 years. During Canadian Days, I've organized a food drive with our local food shelf, the Department of Indian Work, which is a part of the Interfaith Action Group, and gotten to know them extremely well, because they serve not just the Indian community, but really anyone in here in Little Canada. They are looking out for all community members. So I think just expanding the opportunities to work with these already established groups that we have locally is a wonderful opportunity, and I hope to keep doing that.
Thank you, Chris. Angie?
Yes, I echo the sentiments to be inclusive of other groups and so forth in our city. I think everybody brings a great experience and great things to the table. I think from a city standpoint, yes, we make those connections with the groups in our city, the Hmong and the Native American Resource Center and so forth. I think giving the opportunity to just speak with them and ask them, what can we do for you? How can we represent? Would you like to represent? They're just like anybody, it depends on personalities. Maybe the one person in their group would like to be on some committees and so forth. So maybe we create those committees within the city to address the groups and to recognize all of them. I think it's a wonderful scenario if we can even host things at City Hall. Yes, we do reach out to people, but I think too, to bring people together in one setting creates an awareness for everyone who's all here. I mean, you might drive by a building and have no idea who is there. So when we all come together, oh yes, you're in that building, and yes, I would like to contribute. I'd love to work with you. All great things, and I think the city can partake in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Teresa?
Yeah, well, I definitely think you need to go out and meet with the people where they are. I have always advocated, and when I first ran, I advocated for a committee or commission of diverse individuals to basically oversee what the city and the council does, to make sure that we are adequately and fairly and respectfully representing them and their needs, and that is just starting to get underway now. We are starting out with a committee that is working on diversity. So that is in a very nascent stage, but hopefully we'll get somewhere with that. I think we need to go out and talk with the faith communities, just talk to various, whoever wants to show up at a meeting. I think we need to talk and reach out and ask where we can go to find people who would be interested. I think we have to do some additional language translation beyond what we're doing currently. I think we need to maybe look at providing childcare or something for people who are unable to come, because I think a lot of parents are having difficulties showing up at 6 o'clock or whatever time, or leaving their kids at home. So I think those would be some ways to help get people involved. Thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. Next question. With youth being the future of our community, how would you like to see the relationship between the City of Little Canada and the Roseville Area School District? With youth being the future of our community, how would you like to see the relationship between the City of Little Canada and the Roseville Area School District? First, we have Chris Kwapick.
All right. Thank you, Kitty. Yeah, youth are our future. Absolutely, I preach that to my kids every day. I think it's extremely important to have good working relationships with our local school district. I've attended several meetings with school district leadership to talk about that very thing. How can we basically be better partners to one another? And it talks about, we've talked with them about, the potential for redevelopment and what that would mean for the school district. If that means, all of a sudden you've got an influx of more kids, are the local schools going to be able to handle that? To even scarier scenarios, unfortunately, and talking about, what happens if it's a worst case scenario and you have lockdowns at schools. And so open dialogue between the city and the school district is extremely important, especially where it can partner on areas. One of the things that we do have sort of a unique relationship with is Spooner Park is very well connected to Little Canada Elementary, and we definitely want to make sure that we are good partners with them whenever they want to make a project happen or we want to make a project happen. That way it's just a lot easier. Once you have those relationships, it's a lot easier to move things forward in a more amicable way.
Thank you, Chris. Teresa?
Yeah, this is a great question because I don't actually know a great answer to it other than, obviously, I think Chris is right. There needs to be a lot of open dialogue between the city and the school district. And I think we also can look at ways in which the city can just be very open to inviting the youth into what we do in our Parks and Rec department. We have the LCRA. I think that just keeping the youth occupied, I think, is a great way to just have some involvement with them. But as far as the districts go, I'm very open to working directly with the districts and the superintendent. I mean, the superintendent is great because she's very, has regular meetings, invites elected officials to attend those. And so is always very open about what she's working on, and I think wants to have a similar back and forth with the cities. So I think that just continuing on with those activities is really the way to find out what their needs are and how we can best serve them and work with them. Thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. Angie?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in youth softball, as I had mentioned, and it's amazing what we have here in Little Canada with our Little Canada Recreation Association and what we do have to offer with our ball fields and so forth, our ice skating rinks. And with that said, we have a wonderful neighbor of City of Roseville. And our Little Canada, I look at it as we're the feeder to Roseville, eventually the high school. And it's wonderful how they reach out in a lot of capacities. They have skate with the Raiders, and they have things at the Oval and so forth, really creating community, and it's right in our backyard. And I think continuing to facilitate those partnerships and the youth having that input from the older kids really makes an impact, I believe. And it gives them an idea of what will it look like when I'm that age. And it's a lot of fun to watch the kids grow in these capacities as teammates, and even just on a Saturday skate pickup game at the hockey rink. It's very fun to see, and I think we should continue to work with the city of Roseville, work with their departments that would implicate ours, and really engage the Little Canada Recreation Association in the wonderful work they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Next question. What do you see as the impact of climate change in Little Canada, and what specific environmental initiatives would you propose for our community? What do you see as the impact of climate change in Little Canada, and what specific environmental initiatives would you propose for our community? First on this question is Angie.
So climate change, we all recognize it happens every day. And yes, we can do personal mitigation of those situations, and also on a broader scale with alternative energies and so forth. But again, for me, it kind of comes down to what impact can you have? And I truly believe in picking up litter. First off, please don't litter. Secondly, when you're taking a walk, bring a plastic bag. You know, pick up 5 things. It's 5 less things that are going to go into our sewer system or go into our lake system or get caught up in the weeds and blow around all winter. It's just a wonderful thing that you can have that direct impact. And yes, like I say, broader scale, we have to understand Mother Earth and what damage we can do, but at the same time, what can we do on a daily level, on a daily basis, on a personal level, in our neighborhoods, with our families, to have that direct impact on our environment. And I really would encourage people, like I say, take a bag with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Angie. Teresa?
Yes, this is so important right now and has been for a number of years now. And so I am very much an advocate of doing everything that you can as a good citizen to basically do your recycling and all of those types of things, using electric vehicles when possible, walking more, doing those types of things. Hopefully soon we're going to see the food scrap pickup program coming to us. I don't know when. I'm really hoping it's going to be soon. It was started already in a couple of other cities. And so I'm looking forward to that coming, so that should be a good opportunity. I also work with the Ramsey County League of Local Government, and we have a climate action group, and I am a co-league with a colleague from Shoreview, John Doan, city council person, and we are working on 2 major initiatives. First, to help all of our Ramsey County cities establish or enhance their climate action plans by sharing resources and not reinventing the wheel for every suburb of Ramsey County. So that's the first part. And then I'm also part of the Manufactured Homes Initiative, where we are working with manufactured home communities within Ramsey County to try to help them with weatherization, weather stripping, various things like that. And I just want to plug for this, October 5th, there is a Manufactured Home Community Resource Day at St. Adelia's from 10 to 3.
Thank you, Teresa. Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Kitty. So the city's been doing a lot to try to address climate change, both in the sense of what we can do in our overall footprint, but also how can we serve the city better. So one of the things that that the city's recently done is when the city needed a new roof, we actually just, I think, did this last week, or we looked at this last week, we're actually looking at putting solar panels on the roof. So when you're looking to replace a roof, can you incorporate that into the overall planning and the budget for that, and do that on as many city facilities as possible? That way we can not only, we can harness sun, but also actually save money on electricity in the long run, which will actually save the city money. Another thing that we've recently done is we've recently created a stormwater fund, which we did, I believe, last year when it was in drought. And boy, this year was a turnaround. And so the thing about our changing climate is that you just don't know what kind of a weather event you're going to have, but you're eventually going to have them, right? We're not always going to, we had a very dry winter, not a lot of snow plowing needed, so we're saving money there, fortunately on snow plows and salt. But at the same time, we have some serious need in our city for addressing some aging infrastructure when it comes to stormwater management, because that can be, when you start, that goes on way too long and you don't address stormwater, that can become a very big problem for a lot of citizens.
Thank you, Chris. Next question. Are there any services currently provided by the city that you believe should be cut back or eliminated? Or are there any new opportunities to share services with other communities or entities? Are there any services currently provided by the city that you believe should be cut back or eliminated? Or are there any new opportunities to share services with other communities or entities? First on this question is Teresa.
Well, that is a good question. I can't, off the top of my head, think of any services that we are providing that should be cut back or eliminated. Although when I think about it now, I think we have too many garbage haulers all at once, but that's something we're going to have to deal with in the next iteration of contract negotiations. So we'll see how that goes. As far as things that we can share, I'm sure there's a lot of things that we can share. As I mentioned, I work with the Ramsey County League of Local Governments, and that's kind of what we do, is we're sort of a resource sharing depot, for lack of a better word. And we are always sharing our various, good ideas and what's working for cities and what's not. And we are presenting them in our monthly program meetings. And so a lot of great ideas have come up that we basically share resources. So we hear a lot of different things that, this is working and this isn't. And we have speakers that come in and talk about these things. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for that. I'm not thinking of specific initiatives right now, other than, we are working on the climate change work together as a group. So that's helpful. I'm sure that there are other things that we can approach that way, and I expect that we will and should in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. Chris?
Yeah. I can't think of anything where we want to cut back, especially given the fact that, as I mentioned before, the city does run pretty lean. And on purpose, we, again, are trying to make sure we're providing the services that the city needs at the best level that we can. One of the things, that we do already sort of share is within our fire department. Our fire department is a part of a regional multi-aid agreement where essentially if there's a call that goes out and it's, on the northwest side of town and you need a fire, it might not be Little Canada who shows up first, it might be Shoreview who shows up first or someone else. So I really appreciate the opportunity where governments can and local entities can make those agreements to make sure that the entire region is being served, especially when it's as vital as something like a fire department. Another thing that I would just maybe mention, and I hope to not give our Parks and Recs director any heartburn with this, but I've been a youth baseball and basketball coach for the last few years in the Roseville area. And when I first went to sign up my son for baseball, I tried to do it in Little Canada. And unfortunately, we didn't have enough kids signing up here in Little Canada, whereas you had literally 120 kids signing up in Roseville. So I'm wondering if there's something that we can do there where we sort of mutually, share the idea of make sure you're including Little Canada kids. Maybe one of the teams is a Little Canada team. Perhaps you're sharing facilities if they're available, that where we can use them, they can use them, and there can be just some interplay right there as well.
Thank you, Chris. Angie?
So being new, admittedly, to government work, I have not drilled into the budget for the City of Little Canada. I think it's always warranted to make sure we are running as lean as we can be and so forth. And that would be one thing I, as a council member, would want to do, is let's look at perhaps where is there waste that we can cut or possibly shift money elsewhere to better serve our community. With that said as well, I think in the past we have shared community officers, proactive policing with area cities like Vadnais Heights and so forth in contract with Ramsey County. I would love to look at those initiatives on an ongoing basis, because you don't want to get behind the 8 ball with safety for your citizens. I think that you always want to be proactive in that area. And also with the sharing of the fire departments, my son actually is a firefighter actually in Lake Elmo, but he is aware of the he fills me in a lot of things I didn't know about how they do create these teams and so forth of city units and arriving for safety and so forth in area cities. I think that's a wonderful framework that we can learn a lot from. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. We'll now be starting over on the order used in question 1. The question is, do you believe public transit is meeting the needs of the community? If not, what changes would you support? Do you believe public transit is meeting the needs of the community? If not, what changes would you support? And first we'll have Chris.
Sorry, just making sure I got that. So yes, I think public transit. I'll be honest. I don't take public transit very often to get to Minneapolis. But from what I've experienced, I think that it has been adequate, at least along the Rice Street corridor. I know that there is a plan to put in additional, I don't know if they're called rapid ramps or what have you, but essentially to make transit a lot more efficient along that corridor, and to not only serve Little Canada, but it would actually go, I think, all the way through St. Paul and into Dakota County. So I think making sure that people have access to get to where they need to go is obviously important. I think we are maybe potentially a little lacking within the city itself, but obviously I will say I'm not an expert on it. I think that's something that if we did need to work more on that, I would want to obviously partner with the Met Council to bring in their expertise and to just assess if that is something that the city actually needs.
Thank you, Chris. Angie?
So public transit is wonderful. I used to commute down to Minneapolis, and I used to park at the Park and Ride on C and 61. And it's a phenomenal system. And I encourage people to use the system when they need to be downtown Minneapolis or downtown St. Paul. We are in a great spot in Little Canada with great access to other cities and the larger cities as well. I would say, I think for public transit in our city itself, I think we need to look at numbers. We need to look at ridership numbers and so forth. I think it's coming back, but I do think it did take an obvious hit, like everything did, from our COVID scenarios. People couldn't be on buses together necessarily. So to get that back to where it was, I don't know if it's at that point yet, but I think we always need to look at the ridership numbers. And if the need is there, then we facilitate the solution. But I think we need to investigate that further and see what's best to serve our businesses and people in Little Canada.
Thank you, Angie. Teresa?
My short answer to this is no. I don't really think it is meeting the needs necessarily. I think Angie's right. I think there is probably some real investigation that needs to be done to see, what ridership would be and things like that. But I know just from, my years of experience when I was trying to find ways to commute as a commuter to downtown Minneapolis and downtown St. Paul, you had to go to another city to take a bus and to commute. And if you wanted to, those were commuter buses, and so if you wanted to, you had an appointment in the middle of the day or something like that, you had to drive. And that was, there just wasn't any really good options in Little Canada to get picked up. And I think there are a lot of people who have, some of the elderly people and people with disabilities would benefit from increased transportation from buses or various other forms of transportation. I think that there also needs to be a look at safety because I know that there are some issues with people taking public transportation and not feeling safe on public transportation. I also think that the infrastructure that we have around, but the bus stops and the bus, the bus stops are just literally a sign that's a bus stop, and it's not it's not very adequate. I think it would be nice to have, a bus shelter, different things like that. So I think we need to look at some of that. Thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. For the last question, we're going to have a lightning round, which means you get 30 seconds to answer this question. What do you believe is Little Canada's greatest strength or asset? What do you believe is Little Canada's greatest strength or asset? And for this round, we begin with Teresa.
Little Canada is in the most central location you can find. It's set up with 36 and 694 and 35E and all of these places right around. You can get to anywhere in about 15, 20 minutes or less. And it still has this lovely, wonderful hometown kind of feel to it. And it's a very community-oriented, lovely city to live in where I think people just really feel at home. So that, to me, is Little Canada.
Thank you, Teresa. Next, we have Chris.
You took every one of my answers. Jeez. Jeez. Well, yeah, like as I mentioned before, correct. My wife and I moved here because of its central location. Obviously, it's a great place for if you're either living here and you work in St. Paul or Minneapolis, or if you want to have a business here. I feel it's a terrific place to be. But really, the thing that makes it best is the people, and that is the reason why we stayed. We've met so many nice neighbors. Too many to name that we've gotten into, like I said, youth sports, through our kids' schools. It's just a wonderful community, and I mean, that's why we stayed, and that's why I love it here.
Thank you, Chris. And Angie?
I would say our greatest strength and asset is the outdoor life. I really do, I guess, for me personally, enjoy natural resources. A block away, accessibility, driving down to other parks and running the trails and whatnot. Having your children be able to ride their tricycle along the trail with you. And we have such a sustainable community. We have such great businesses as well. And I would have to say for sure Canadian Days is the best.
Thank you, Angie. In closing, we apologize if your question was not asked. We can never get to all the issues in a limited format such as this. We encourage you to directly contact the candidates. The closing statements will be given in the reverse order of the opening statements. Please remember, you have 2 minutes to conclude your remarks. So we begin this time with Angie.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. It's been great to see faces in the crowd, and thank you, Kitty, and thank you, Teresa, and Chris, for this wonderful forum. And we miss you. Dawn, that you weren't able to be here tonight. As part of this whole process, it's really just been a privilege to learn the process in becoming a candidate. And I hope I can serve all of the people of Little Canada well if I do become elected as a council member. The city has given me and my family so much, and I really hope to give back. I think we're all qualified to be on the council, as they both have proven themselves as current council members. I think one of the most important things that comes out of everything on any government level is the ability to listen. It's the ability to listen to the residents that live here, the businesses that thrive here, and listening to the organizations and schools that serve everyone here. And I think I can be that voice for all of that. And I really would appreciate the privilege. So on November 5th, make sure you get out there and vote anyways. But fill in that circle for Angie Malone. And if you'd like more information, my website is cangierun.com. And I will be out and about, as I already have been, knocking on doors and getting input. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Angie Malone. Next, we have Chris.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Kitty. Thank you, League of Women Voters, for putting on this forum. Angie and Teresa, thank you so much for stepping up to run, it's absolutely scary to put yourself out there and try to make a difference in your community. But I just commend the both of you for being willing to do that. You know, the past 18 months that I've served on the council has been extremely enlightening. At times it's been humbling, sometimes very difficult, but it's been extremely rewarding. And I feel that I bring a really good knowledge set. I feel like I bring a good temperament to the position. I feel like I have, you know, with my professional background, I feel like I can be of really good service to the city and just be a strong advocate for the city. One of the things that I'm looking forward to do, as I said, you know, I was appointed 18 months ago. And so I need to basically get out, make sure I'm getting out there as I have been trying to do, and meet as many neighbors as I can. Because this isn't something that should be just handed to somebody. You need to earn it. And that's something that I firmly believe in. As I always say, you know, I try to be as collaborative as possible. And when I think something needs to get done, you can't just complain about it. You really need to get to work on trying to get it done. So with that, I would just say, once again, thank you so much for this opportunity to let you get to know me. If you'd like to find out more, I'm on Facebook, Kwapick, the number 4 LC, and I very much look forward to meeting as many of you as possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris Kwapick. And last, we have Teresa.
Thanks, Katie. I once again want to thank the League of Women Voters, Roseville area, 9 North, Chris and Angie, and the audience here and at home. I bring a collaborative and inclusive working style that draws on diverse perspectives to achieve common goals. My approach is shaped by both my professional experiences and my personal experiences, particularly as the mother of a son with severe autism. By actively seeking input from various resources, including residents, local businesses, city staff, fellow council members, and experts, I aim to facilitate comprehensive problem solving that addresses multiple viewpoints. I can truly hear and understand different, sometimes conflicting perspectives. My personal experiences have deepened my empathy and commitment to inclusivity. I strive to ensure that all community members, especially those with diverse needs, are represented in the decision-making process, and I aim to find ways to solve immediate issues while strengthening our community's capacity for future challenges. I take my role as a city council member seriously. I'm also a resident who has to live within a budget, and I want to ensure full accountability for every dollar that the city spends. I want to make sure that we have the services and the amenities that we need and want to live in a vibrant and thriving Little Canada. I'm here to make sure that all of our contracted services are reviewed on a regular basis and to make sure that we're not overspending or not getting what we require as a city. Transparency and a sense of trust are absolute necessities. I have been so honored to serve in the City Council for the past 3.5 years, and I sincerely appreciate the confidence you have placed me in that role. I ask that you continue to support me in my re-election efforts in November, and I promise to continue to advocate for you and Little Canada in the coming years. Please feel free to contact me, and I will be out on the street as well. Well, not literally, but Teresa, no H, Miller, numeral 4, at littlecanada@gmail.com at any time. And go vote, no matter what. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa Miller. I'd like to remind the viewing audience that the views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters is a nonprofit organization, and all the people involved in organizing and running this forum are volunteers. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I would like to acknowledge and thank the candidates who are serving their community by their willingness to participate in the democratic process by running for office. I'd also like to thank the audience for watching your candidates discuss issues that are important to your community. This forum will be rebroadcast on Channel 15 and is available on demand at www.9north.org. 9 is spelled out. And also at 9 North's YouTube channel. Every vote does count. This year, the election day is Tuesday, November 5th, And polls are open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. You have the option of early voting and voting by mail. For any questions on voting, go to the Ramsey County website, the Elections and Voting section. Please remember to vote. Thank you and good night.